Southeast Radio's Business Matters with Carl Fitzpatrick.
Southeast Radio.
Well, while we settle into another period of tough restrictions, many sectors have come to a grinding halt once more. However, with the rollout of the vaccine underway, there's a sense of cautious optimism about a potential recovery on the horizon at some point this year. The latest results of a recruitment trend survey from the Manpower Group indicate positive signs in this regard, and John Galvin joins us now to discuss these results in greater detail. John, you joined us on Business Matters in June last year, just as the restrictions from the initial lockdown were about to be eased. But from a recruitment perspective, how did the second half of 2020 shape up?
Well, I think the 2020 continued to be challenging in many ways. I think overall what's proven to be very true is from an Irish people perspective, but also from an Irish business perspective. In 2020, people were very resilient and businesses were very resilient. And we saw in the summer months of last year where the economy started to pick up again as restrictions were lifted. But then as the cases rose, a little bit more uncertainty came into the market. We were obviously running into the US elections, which in a way had some impact on the global economy as people were looking to see how that developed. And then as we moved into the latter half of the year, we did see companies were picking up their hiring intentions, but with the 6 weeks of restrictions that came in November and December, that ended up putting a slight hold on I guess, people's confidence, employers' confidence. But unlike earlier on in 2020, where a lot of roles were cancelled altogether, at the end of 2020, they were put on hold. And I think that bodes well now for the start of 2021, where as opposed to just cancelling the positions, employers are now saying, let's get people back into our businesses for 2021 in the expectation of a rebound in the economy.
As we look to the year ahead, of course we hope it's going to be the year of recovery. So what projections is the Manpower Group making for 2021?
Sure. Well, Manpower Group Employment Outlook survey is conducted quarterly to measure employers' intentions to increase or decrease the number of employees in their workforces during the next quarter. So the survey we've recently completed, which reflects employers' hiring intentions up until the end of March 2021, is quite positive, and it shows that Irish employers are reporting positive hiring plans for the first time in 9 months, which is a net employment outlook score of plus 5%. So that's the first positive outlook since the pandemic arrived in Ireland last year, and it's an improvement of 9 percentage points compared to last quarter. I think most notably, Irish manufacturers are signalling a return to hiring in the first 3 months of 2021, which is a significant improvement compared to the last quarter of last year.
And what are you hearing from the manufacturing industry in relation to what's driving that 5% growth that they're predicting in 2021 in terms of jobs?
I think during 2020, there was a lot of uncertainty, particularly within the manufacturing sector. And I guess if you were just to look at that purely from a supply chain perspective, organisations didn't know whether the demand for their products would continue to be there in 2020, predominantly as a result of COVID. But it also from the other end of the supply chain, they didn't know if they'd be able to source their parts to manufacture their products, again, as a result of impact on supply chains due to COVID. So as we saw in the last couple of months of 2020 with the rollout of the vaccines, that in itself has given businesses more confidence. But also we see, the US government, the UK and also Europe talking about increased stimulus plans in the months ahead. And I think that in itself has given businesses confidence to start increasing manufacturing again.
And of course, the tourism and hospitality sectors have been some of the worst hit sectors since the onset of COVID-19. But is it too early to tell at this stage if there will be any signs of major recovery on the horizon?
I think within those specific sectors, from our survey results, they're some of the best hiring intentions in the first couple of months of 2021. However, I guess the caveat against that is that, they're coming from quite a low base because of the impact they experienced in 2020. But certainly the hiring intentions across that sector is quite positive. It's probably yet to be seen the overall impact that last year has had within that sector. And is there certain businesses in that sector that just haven't been able to survive? We see that the likes of the employment wage subsidy scheme is going to continue into the end of March, potentially to be reviewed further. But that really depends, on how COVID continues to impact into 2021. But certainly there's going to be improvements in that sector, but yet to be seen how quickly it gets back to the pre-COVID levels.
And John, I understand that the finance and business services sector was the sole exception in terms of projecting an increase in confidence for 2021. Why was this the case?
I think throughout 2020, the financial and business services sector was one of the sectors that was relatively least impacted. And I think what we see within that sector now in early 2021 is that there's been, it's remained quite steady. So other sectors, have been negatively impacted during 2020. And what we see coming into the start of this year is that they're starting to see that bounce. We didn't necessarily see that within the finance and business services sector last year. So effectively what that survey report is saying is that it's more or less steady state as we move into 2021.
And in terms of the survey results themselves, was there any disparity between the hiring expectations of SMEs when compared to larger organisations such as the multinationals?
There was, yeah. So, and we've tended to see this in the past as well, that the larger organisations, probably because they've got greater resources and finances, tend to be in a position to avail of a rebound in the economy a little bit quicker. So the survey results actually showed that larger companies, 250 employees plus, are reporting the most positive hiring confidence at the start of 2021 with an outlook of 13%. But across all businesses then to the small size firms, such as those with less than 10 people, they all have positive hiring intentions as we move into the start of the new year, but just to a lesser extent than the bigger organisations.
And John, have the type of skills being sought by employers changed in any material way as a result of the pandemic?
I think what we've seen over the past 12 months is that organisations are certainly looking, from a soft skill perspective, for individuals who are much more flexible and adaptable. As I said, I think people in general have been quite resilient, and organisations have had to be more flexible and adapt to the different environment. I think that's probably how the future of work looks for a lot of people. You will need to be flexible. The roles that you're in at the moment probably aren't going to be the roles that you're in 3 or 4 years' time. And as businesses look to attract individuals into their business, I think it's key to have people that are going to be able to learn new skills in a role and adapt to new environments. So I think that's going to be quite important.
And John, finally, it was reported in the Sunday Business Post just before Christmas that the government were estimating that it would take up until the end of 2023 to get employment levels back to pre-COVID times. Would you concur with that?
I think that people might be a little bit concerned when they hear that initially, and when they heard that initially. But when you look at it, it probably is quite realistic. When we surveyed the employers about when will they get back to those pre-COVID hiring intentions, 50% have indicated throughout 2021. And again, I think that is a reflection. We're still moving into the year with COVID. There's still challenges that organisations are going to face around that. Yes, we have a vaccine rollout, but it will take some time to get that rolled out and for us to see, the positive impact that will have. But nonetheless, confidence will continue to grow during 2021. I think what's going to be key to getting back to that full employment levels that the government were indicating is there's certainly going to be skill sets and businesses that have been impacted to the extent that people won't be able to go back to the jobs that they had, in the early part of 2020 and before that. So it's really about looking at reskilling and upskilling individuals and getting them moving into new roles in the years to come. So reskilling and upskilling is going to be a key to getting us back to full employment.
Well, if you've just tuned in, that was John Galvin, the Managing Director of the Manpower Group in Ireland. And I'd like to thank John for sharing this information with us this morning.
Southeast Radio's Business Matters with Carl Fitzpatrick.
South